Harshana, next question is to you. How do you see the US junior tennis in comparison to Sri Lanka tennis in terms of tournament structures, the levels, coaching programs? Yeah.
I think the biggest difference is the demand and the number of players that are playing. You can't compare a small island like Sri Lanka to a freaking huge country like the US. I mean, there are so many different sections. Like if I look at our section only, I mean, there's like 6 different states in our section, and in our section itself, there's so many different levels. I mean, when we were younger, I mean, when Rajeev, Renouk, all of us were younger. I mean, my goal when I was 10, 12, 14, I think until I was 14, was to get to semifinals of the higher age group. And I never did. When I was 10, I never got to 12 semifinals. When I was 14, I never got to 16 semifinals. I could. When I was 16, I never got to 18 semifinals. Because there was always a bunch of players who was above us, who was really like a level above. And so we always had someone to look up to. I think that is there in the US at every section. And there's always someone who is better than you. And again, as I said, there's a lot of people who's involved in tennis. And in Sri Lanka, I think that's what dropped off. And that's why you see 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds are kind of like the same level of getting to the Davis Cup team or playing World Juniors or whatnot. Not World Juniors, like a Junior Davis Cup. So I don't know why it happened. Maybe the systems change, maybe the programs, I don't know. But I think that was a drop off. But in the US, it's hard to compare with Sri Lanka, to be honest. And here there's tons of tournaments all over the country. You can drive anywhere you want and play a tournament, which is pretty easy. But in Sri Lanka, there's not enough tournaments, and it's harder to even bring a lot of tournaments when there's not enough players to participate. The whole point of bringing international tournaments to Sri Lanka is for the Sri Lankan players to participate. But that's the other thing. You have to travel outside to get exposure. I mean, how many times are you going to play with the same people over and over again? So
I mean, to add to what you're saying, Harshan, I do believe in Sri Lanka, we're lacking tournaments. I mean, you see a draw, all the big tournaments in this thing. Even when you see the draw, you can predict, okay, these are who are going to come to the quarters. These are going to come. And when you come to that level, come to the quarters, or you come to the semifinal, you're still playing with your own friends who you practice with, who you play every single tournament with. So, and you know each other's game. You know what's their weak points, what's their advantages. So it doesn't take you're playing against each other in every tournament. So there's not enough exposure. Then when you go abroad and play a tournament and you're playing a guy you're playing for the first time, we are not talented enough yet to figure out what their weak point and all are fast as soon as you need to.
I mean, when I played World Juniors, Junior Davis Cup, I mean, I barely won a match, to be honest. I literally could not figure out any player abroad because I just play like once a year or twice a year. That's it. Only when I started playing pro, I got better at it because I got more exposure. Every person I played was someone different. And now I have now I know every time I get on a court, if I play with someone who I've never played, I remember like, okay, I played a guy like this before. I played a guy who has a very similar game like this before. So I know how to deal with it. So, I mean, with experience, that's why you have to play tons of matches. There's no shortcut to that. You can train all your life, but think of training. I mean, you learn your forehand, backhand. It takes like maybe 10 years to master it. And now you have perfect strokes. And now you start playing matches. That means you're a beginner in match play. That means you're 10 years behind match play. So it takes a while. I mean, you might say that kid has good strokes, but it's mentally is the hardest part to really deal with it if you don't have enough matches under your belt.
Yeah, and Timothy, if I may add to that, so last year, I was in Spain during the summer, and one day we ended up going to the Spanish Federation, and we had this long discussion with them, and one of the guys there was saying that look, in the 70s and the 80s, Spain decided, they just took a call, the Spanish Federation took a call that they're going to sponsor a lot of international tournaments, and they decided to host a whole bunch of international tournaments, and they did. And it
They have
came,
like, I think 50 weeks a year or something. It's crazy.
yeah, that's now. But at that time, obviously there weren't very many Spanish players. And then all the sponsors came back to the federation and said, look, we are sponsoring all these tournaments, but all these Americans and Australians are coming here and taking all our money and going, why are we continuing with this? But then the Spanish Federation was really adamant. There were a couple of guys who had been like, no, we need to stick with this. This is a plan. And they did for 10, 15 years. And they said it was obviously very tough, to keep the sponsors going and doing all of that. But at the end of the day, it's paid off, right? Look at the number of like top 100 players who are Spanish. And as Harshana said, they have almost like, I think about 40 odd weeks of futures tournaments in Spain. Not just Nadal, but look at the top players that they've produced in the past 10 years. But it came, this has come as a result of what they did back in the 70s and 80s. And then there were a few guys of the federation who had said, look, it's going to be a matter of time before our guys step up to the plate and start performing if we are able to attract all these players here. Because for local players to travel abroad all the time, obviously it's not easy. They don't have the funding and stuff like that. So it's easier to kind of get them, to your own country.